Hi, I'm Dr. Nick Galli. I'm the mental performance coach for US Speed Skating. And in this video, I want to talk to you about what self-compassion is and how having it can make you feel better and handle struggles in a more effective way. All right, so I want to try a little bit of an exercise with you. As you watch this, I want you to think about a time when you really screwed up, when you really messed up, you did something that you really wish you hadn't done, or made a mistake while you were playing or competing that was, pretty bad, pretty up there in your ranks of mistakes. And I want you to think about the thing that you said to yourself, how you talked to yourself after that mistake. So take a minute, think about that, or a second. And now I want you to think about, and maybe even do this if you have somebody nearby, I want you to turn to that person and I want you to say that awful thing that you said to yourself to them. If it wasn't an awful thing, good for you. But for most of us, when we screw up, we say, really mean things to ourselves that we probably wouldn't say to other people. And whenever I do this exercise and I ask people to repeat that phrase to somebody else, they have a really hard time doing it. And this illustrates the point that we tend to be much kinder and more compassionate to other people than we are to ourselves. And this is where self-compassion comes in. Self-compassion is about treating yourself the way that you treat others. It's not the golden rule, it's a different kind of a rule. We always hear about treating others the way you would like them to treat you, but this is about treating yourself the way that you would like others to treat you. If you're a fan of Parks and Rec, Tom and Donna talk about treat yourself. That's what I'm talking about here with self-compassion. So what is self-compassion? We're going to get into that in a minute, but first what I'd like you to do is to look at these questions. These are some questions that get at how self-compassionate you are for yourself. So take a moment while you look over these and see how you answer them. All right, so as we look at these questions, you can see that it's pretty obvious what answer is more compassionate and what answer is less compassionate. I try to see my failings as part of the human condition. Is that something that you tend to do, or something that you usually don't do? When I fail at something that's important to me, I tend to feel alone in my failure. When I feel inadequate, I try to remind myself that feelings of inadequacy are shared by most people. I'm disapproving and judgmental about my own flaws and inadequacies. It's pretty easy to see here how answering one way or the other would be more or less compassionate. And I just wanted you to do this so you could get a sense of where you lie. A lot of us really struggle with this, really struggle to show ourselves the same compassion that we show other people. And a questionnaire like this gives you a sense for where you are. So let's talk about the dimensions of self-compassion. 3 dimensions. One is being mindful. You've probably heard about mindfulness, this idea of just being aware and in touch with yourself and in a non-judgmental way. So in self-compassion, that means recognizing when you're struggling, when you're having negative emotions, when you're feeling bad about yourself, and just recognizing that in as neutral a way as you can. You're a human being, you're allowed to have feelings. Mindfulness is the first component. The second component is self-kindness. That's exactly what I was talking about a minute ago. The idea that we want to treat ourselves the way that we treat other people when they're struggling. Being kind to ourselves is part of being self-compassionate. And the final part is common humanity. This one is about recognizing that struggle is part of the human condition. As we record this, film this right now, we're in the middle of a pandemic. It's the ultimate common humanity. We're all dealing with COVID and have been affected by it in some way. Whether you're an athlete, the parent of an athlete, a coach, whatever it might be, you've been affected. And sometimes it can be comforting to know that you're not in that alone. So 3 parts to self-compassion: mindfulness, self-kindness, and common humanity. So if we look at each of those separately, we can think about ways that we can become more self-compassionate. And I've got 3 tips here, one for each of those dimensions. To be more mindful, think about how you can maybe more name your thoughts in a neutral way, rather than putting them up and elevating them to a high level of intensity that overwhelms you. I'm feeling sad right now. That's what I'm experiencing. I'm going to name that, think about it, and not judge that, just observe that. So thinking about how can we remove some of the judgment from our emotions and our thoughts. That's being mindful. The second tip is to show more self-kindness, and to do that, think about what would you say to a friend, or how would you talk to a friend if they were dealing with the same thing that you're dealing with? If they just had a failure out there in competition, what would you say to them that would make them feel good? Try and direct that same dialogue to yourself. And finally, to feel more connected and have that sense of common humanity, we've got information at our fingertips and stories at our fingertips. Think about an athlete or a person you really admire, that you look up to, that you aspire to be, emulate yourself after. Research their story. You're going to find, I'm sure, trials and tribulations and struggles and adversity that they experienced and that they got through. And I think that helps really cultivate that sense of common humanity. So 3 ways to be more self-compassionate. That's to work on naming your emotions in a neutral way, talk to yourself the way that you would talk to others when they're struggling, and think about how the people you admire, or research their story on how they dealt with struggles that they had.